So we are recording. Yay, we're starting. So welcome. This is just a reminder we are recording this. I'm Edwin Roach from the XR Empathy Circle work group, and this is our Empathy Cafe series on the XR principles. And it's actually our 16th cafe. We've gone through all the XR principles. We've gone through the XR demands 1, 2, and 3. And now we're on our last Empathy Cafe on the topic of should there be a fourth demand? And just want to set our intention for this cafe, which is to create a regenerative culture of empathy, which in short means that everyone is free to openly and authentically express themselves and be heard and understood to their satisfaction. And that we do that mutually. So we mutually listen to each other and mutually hear each other. And that we use a process called the Empathy Circle, which uses active listening or empathic listening to do that. So we're gonna go for 2.5 hours. We're gonna do a little round of introductions, short introductions, and then a little intro on how to take part in an empathy circle. We're gonna go into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back to debrief. So let's get started with just your name, your location, and any XR chapter you're part of. So as I mentioned, I'm Edwin Rutch from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm in XR San Francisco as well as XR Empathy Circle work group. And you don't have to be part of XR to be part of this, so just a reminder. So Sophia, you want to just introduce yourself?
I'm Sophia. I live in Sweden, in Malmo, and I'm not a part of XR.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, I'm Andy. I'm in South Somerset in England, and I'm a member of the XR South Somerset local group and also the XR Buddhists in the UK.
Okay, thanks. Bill?
Yeah, Bill Filler. I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area, not too far from Edwin. I'm a part of the XR Empathy Circle work group.
And Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul. I am in Cornwall in the UK, and I'm in a couple of local groups, Devon and Cornwall, and I'm also running a few XR Facebook groups, such as the XR Rebel Reports and XR Events and Actions. I'm also a founding member of XR Farmers, being currently farmer. I used to run a market research agency for ages and ages, but then about 15 years ago we decided to sell out and start farming. So I'm now a farmer, except I'm not a farmer right now because I'm in hospital having a small accident, and that doesn't interfere with my thought process or participation in Zooms. Next.
Okay, great. Thank you for welcome. Glad you could make it. Maureen?
Good evening, I'm Maureen, XR Ireland, Kildare, activist.
Kevin, thanks. Kevin?
Hi there, Kevin Guyan from Guelph, Ontario, Canada, member of XR in Guelph, and more so on as well XR Global Support, and about to hopefully start with media and messaging. And in north of Toronto, which is Toronto has just disbanded. XR Toronto was just disbanded in the last handful of days. So I'm here to kind of navigate through that and talk about listen to what we have about the fourth demand. Thank you very much.
Cool, great. Claire?
Claire, I'm in Wigan, in Lancashire, in England. And I'm kind of hovering around XR. I'm very interested in the Empathy Cafe.
Thank you. John?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear any of that.
Oh.
Did you not hear any of it?
Yeah, maybe you want to say it again, a little closer to the microphone?
Sure. So I'm Claire. I live in Wigan in the UK, and I'm kind of hovering around XR and just, you know, sometimes taking part in it.
Okay.
And I'm really interested in the empathic cafes.
Great, thanks. John?
Yeah, I'm I'm John Beto. I'm in Seattle, Washington, on the west coast of the U.S., the erstwhile home of the Capitol Hill organized protest, and I'm part of XR Seattle.
Okay, welcome. Sarah?
My name's Sarah. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm part of the Green Party of Alameda County.
Okay, welcome. So our topic is usually in this group, as we've gone through the principles and the demands, we've had someone that presents, gives a 10-minute presentation on that value or principle. But since this is on the fourth demand, we're just not going to have any presentation, because it's really up to everyone to just kind of share where they are. So we'll be dividing into two groups, it looks like. And Bill, can you facilitate one? Would you? And so we want to just explain, has anyone not seen the video on how to take part in the empathy circle? Just wondering how much explanation we need to give. Well, I'll give a very short explanation of how the empathy circle works. So in this process, there's a speaker, a listener, and silent listeners. And so the speaker will have 5 minutes to talk about the topic about the fourth demand for XR. If there should be one, or what demand that they would like, or just any thoughts about the fourth demand. You select who you're going to speak to, and that you speak, share a little bit, you pause and let the speaker reflect back their understanding of what they understand that you've said. And then you check, did they understand it? Because you want them to really understand what you're saying. If they didn't understand it, you can repeat it again, and then, you know, check again. And if they understood it, you just continue with your sharing. And so one thing is, with that process, you want to be sure to pause periodically so that there's space for the person to reflect back what they're hearing. As the listener, you're listening to the speaker, and when you reflect back, you're just reflecting back in your own words what you understand them to be saying. And you don't want to add your own comments, your own ideas. You're only wanting to just reflect back what it is that they are saying. And then once the speaker, we're going to have 5-minute turns. You know, I'll be timekeeping, hold up something like this, you know, time. And that means that your time is up. At that point, you want to sort of finish up. You'll get your final reflection, and then it'll become the turn of the listener, the person who is listening, to become the speaker, and they will select who they want to speak to, and then we'll start the process again. We're going to just keep going around like that for the time allotted. Kind of the best way to kind of just learn the process is just kind of by doing it. You can pick it up pretty quickly if you haven't done it before. So we're going to have 5-minute turns, and so the topic is just, you know, whatever is up for you around the fourth demand. If there should be one, you know, some people are saying there should be a fourth demand. There's different versions of the fourth demand. There's some people saying it shouldn't be a fourth demand. So it's really, you know, just whatever your thoughts are on that. We'll be recording the calls, the circle. So Bill, I gave you recording permission if you want to record that group. And yeah, Paul, you had a question? You're muted. Let me see if we unmute. There you go.
Okay, you are in control there. Okay. It sounds a little bit woolly to be not to have anything specific in front of us. And I'm just wondering whether it might be at least an idea to put into the chat 1 or 2 versions of the proposed fourth demands, so we have some idea what we are actually talking about. Because you know, words, I always find it very much easier if I have something written in front of me, I can refer back to those words and say, okay, this is now talking about this bit and that bit. It's quite clear on the page. Just like when you were discussing the individual demands previously and the various principles, there's clear text and you're discussing that part of it. You see exactly what you're discussing. I find this a little bit woolly concept, discussing possibility of some forth command demand, which could be anything basically. You're saying it's supposed to be something.
Yeah. Do you want to post it? Do you have it there to post? You can,
asking me or
yeah, if you want to post something, feel
I
free.
don't have anything to hand. I could have.
Oh, okay.
Around.
I have a site. I just looked it up, so
Okay,
I
cool.
can share it.
Thanks. Yeah,
So did
Bill?
I just put one version in the chat.
Okay, cool. So if the topic is the fourth demand, and there's a couple of versions, I guess you can also Google it. And also anything, you can also talk about whatever's alive for you. So you can, if you're having a bad day, you can talk about that too. Or if you're having a good day, you can talk about that. So it's, you know, it's the fourth demand or whatever is alive for you. So I think we're ready to go, unless I'm forgetting something, Bill, or did I?
Sounds good.
Okay. So then we'll see you in the cafe. We're going to go for an hour, almost an hour and 45 minutes in the call. So then we'll come back to the full group and sort of have a debrief. So I think the rooms are all made. So see you in the breakout rooms.
Nice to be together again.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so let me just open the breakout rooms. I'm doing tech support here too, so I got to keep an eye on the rooms. And 1 second. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to keep the time. Stop. Anybody want to keep time? So anybody good? Sophia, you up to it, or I can do it if
I can keep time.
Okay.
I just have to get my phone.
Okay. So if you want to start, as someone who hasn't done the process again, you can maybe start or to speak to me and I can model it, the listening. So if Paul or Joe.
A paper also or something with time on it, or
you have a paper? Oh, yeah, just write time.
I just have to, yeah, I can write time when you're talking.
So who would like to start? You have 5 minutes and you can speak on the topic or whatever is alive for you. Maybe speak to me and I'll just model the listening, how the listening works. Perhaps John or Paul.
Okay, I can go.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my first encounter with Extinction Rebellion was at a formation meeting in Oakland in January 2019. And that was at the, I don't remember the name of the facility, but it's a Native American community center that was sort of a locus for American Indian movement, 70s. And my understanding is that XR US adopted the fourth demand because of the input from indigenous organizers who'd been observing the perpetuation of racist structures in environmental activist organizations.
Can I reflect that back? So what I'm hearing is you had your first experience with XR was at a Native American center in the Bay Area, and as you understand it, was that community that was suggesting the fourth demand because of the the political or the racial situation in the United States. They were the ones that sort of suggested it or proposed
Specifically, the racism that was being perpetuated in environmental organizations.
Oh, so there's, they were suggesting it because they were seeing racism in environmental organizations, and that's why they proposed it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was, the wording was particularly proposed by any Native or indigenous groups or people. The wording, I think, came through a process that involved a fair number of people. So the XR US organization adopted a demand for just transition that includes reparations and sovereignty for reparations. I could look at the phrasing, I guess, but so I mean, I think the demand is important, particularly in the Americas, where indigenous people were exterminated and our systems are built on the structures of slavery.
So what I'm hearing there is you're sort of giving a background, like how the fourth demand got created or how it came about, and that you support that because you're seeing that in America, at least, it was, the systems are based on racism and slavery and sort of the extermination, I guess, of some Native Americans. And so it sounds like you're supporting some kind of a justice-based fourth demand.
Yeah, and I would say also that making a demand, is setting an ideal, and it's not something that one can expect to be achieved, but having that ideal can govern people's govern or influence people's behavior and decisions, and so articulating that is important in my mind.
Yes, you think it's important to have, now's the time too, I don't know if you're able to see Sophia's holding up that sign, but so you see that it's important to have an ideal to sort of work towards, because it kind of helps guide and govern sort of the direction that you're going. So you find it helpful to important to kind of have that ideal there. You may not achieve it, but at least it helps guide the direction.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay. Then speak to Andy. Yeah, Paul?
Sorry, I was hoping to be the next speaker, but if Andy is the next, then please.
Yeah, it's, you have your choice of who it is. It'll come around.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Everybody.
Sure.
So I'll speak to Andy, and so what do I think? I actually think if there was a fourth demand, I think the fourth demand is we want a culture of empathy. because I'm a little skeptical about justice. I think justice has failed. I think it's the sort of the understanding of what justice is. It's not really transformational enough. It's sort of, it actually just, I think justice is, yeah, I'm very skeptical about our current understanding of justice.
So what I think is that if we are going to have a fourth demand, rather than being a demand for justice, it should be a demand for an empathic culture, for empathy. And my reason for that is I actually don't think that justice is attainable anymore.
It's not that it's
Whereas
attainable. It's not that justice is not attainable. Is that justice has the premises of the understanding of justice just recreate the existing dysfunction within our culture. It's not revolutionary enough. It's not transformative enough. It just recreates the existing kind of dysfunction of the culture.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, what I don't like about a demand for justice is that it recreates the dysfunctional aspect in our culture, and it just perpetuates that.
Yeah, it's based on certain premises, and it's based on, justice is based on the print. I mean, there's different definitions of justice, like there's different definitions of empathy, but you know, the sort of a common definition of justice, I think, is based on individualism. Like we're all individuals, we have to have this individual responsibility, and so that's one premise.
So one of the problems I see about justice is that I feel it's based on individualism, and that you know, it's about justice for the individual, whereas I think that empathy is much more wide than that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's more relational. It's like it sees the more relationality of the culture. Yeah.
Yeah. So empathy is about the relationality of the culture. Justice is about the individual getting their just desserts or reward.
Yeah, and the another premise is that truth comes through competition. In the court, you hire two gladiators, aka lawyers, and they battle it out, and somehow you come to the truth through this battle, right? So it's the battle is how we're going to come to truth.
So it seems to me that in the justice system, truth is arrived at through combat or battle, and that it's kind of like a gladiatorial arena in which two combatants battle it out, and one of them wins.
And yeah, exactly. And the empathic approach, it's dialogic. We're going to talk through, we're going to keep dialoguing, we're going to keep hearing each other until we come to some kind of a mutual understanding. It's kind of like what we're doing here, right? Where everybody gets heard first. We just keep talking until, you know, we get heard.
So the empathic approach, rather than being gladiatorial, is dialogical, and everybody gets heard. Everybody has a chance to share, and it's a bit like the empathy circle we're doing here. We just keep talking, and gradually we come to some kind of understanding.
Yeah.
Common.
And then it's also based on, justice is also based on external judgment and on retribution. You will pay. We have 2.5 million people in jail in the United States, and that's the outcome of the justice system. You know, so it's that retribution. Whereas a culture of empathy is about healing and about connection.
So we have a justice system in the US, which has led to 2.5 million people being incarcerated, and it's about retribution on those people. And
yeah.
Whereas empathy is not like that. It's about actually working through things.
Yeah, there's a lot more, but I feel heard to this point. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to ask Sophia to listen to me, if she would.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay, thank you. So I don't have, I understand what Edwin's saying about the justice system, but still it's not the way I understood the word justice in the approach of those people who make a fourth demand. So I'd like to try and explore that a little bit.
Okay, so you're understanding your Edwin's point of view about justice, but it seems like you have some disagreements about what those who made the fourth demand, what their perspective on it was, and you want to explore that.
I think that what John said about indigenous peoples and black people, and that's not just a US problem, it's a global problem. It's got a long history associated with imperialism and colonialism. And I feel that we need to balance up. Otherwise, we bring about a rebellion which will perpetuate these problems. And as John said, you know, there was some feeling that the environmental movement hitherto had been, I think, dominated by white middle-class people, perhaps, for example. And I think it's to redress that the fourth demand was brought up.
So what you're seeing about the fourth demand, where John mentioned it being mainly in the States, you're seeing it globally as a global issue, and what your sense is that we need to balance it up, and if we don't, there will be rebellious actions. And yeah, you also mentioned that the XR is mainly white people, so
not only XR but environmental groups have been dominated by middle class people. And of course, XR, the R in XR is rebellion. So it's a rebellion. I mean, it's a rebellion to bring about facing up to the climate crisis by those who have the power to do something about it. So in that respect, if the rebellion is led by a certain elite group and is framed in their image, then I think this will distort the, if the rebellion is successful, then the result will be distorted.
So I hear some fear that if the actions of environmentalists are successful, but they're only governed by elite groups, there will be some distortion there.
Yeah, I share Edwin's wish for an empathic culture, and I would like to see a new civilization evolve. And I think that the Extinction Rebellion is one of the movements that will help to bring that about. So I do take it very seriously.
Yeah, so you share Edwin's perspective where you would like to see a culture of empathy, and you would like to see a new civilization. Sorry for my loud. Just gonna wait it out. Yeah, and you see XR as a part of that. What's the last thing?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sophia. I did feel that you heard me, and I'll leave it there for now, but there's more I'll say when I have another turn. So thank you.
Thank you. I will pick Edwin.
Paul hasn't had a chance. I don't.
Yes, but I'm feeling kind of jittery
Oh,
about
okay.
talking about this, so I would feel
Okay,
safe
sure.
talking to you.
Great. So I'm hearing you chose me instead of Paul because you're feeling a bit jittery about this, and so you would feel safer speaking to me at this point.
Yeah, and because I don't have to kind of like attune to a new person.
And the reason you're choosing me is because then you don't have to tune to a new person, and
Yeah.
that would make you maybe feel more comfortable.
Yeah. I felt when I read the demand right before we entered this group, I felt uncomfortable.
So when you looked at the demand, you felt uncomfortable.
Yes, and it's because I don't like that movement of Black people being the victims and only focusing on them being the victims and excluding all other people that are also victims. It feels kind of narcissistic to me. It's like, hey, focus on us. We are important. We are important. We can just run over you. And I get that sense from that movement that it's all about them and we don't care about the rest. Yes.
So you have when you read the description, it's like you had a feeling of sort of being victims, and it's about them being Black people or the people who are being seen as victims, and that you can, yeah, sort of just being sort of self-centered.
Yeah, and it's not that they're not victims. I know that a lot of them are, but they are not the only victims on this planet. And that bothers me, that they seem to think that their pain is the only pain we need to focus on. And that's not true.
So you feel uncomfortable because you feel that they're saying that our pain is the only pain that's important and we need to focus on that. And you're saying that other people have pain and we need to look at everybody's pain, maybe.
Yeah, so instead of the demand should have stopped at vulnerable people, because there are a lot of vulnerable people out there who don't get the support they need. Not only Black, people with disabilities, people with illnesses, people born in abusive families. There are so many vulnerable people out there, and we should stop at vulnerable people.
So you think that the demand should be wanting to support vulnerable people in general, anyone who's vulnerable, anyone on sort of a vulnerability spectrum, be it disability, from abusive families, just whoever's vulnerable, and just have that be the criteria.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed your perspective on this, Edwin. Because I totally agree that the fourth demand should be on cultivating a culture of empathy where there is mutuality involved, not I'm the victim, so you need to listen to me, because poor me, listen to me. I don't have to listen to you because you are white, you are a man, you are whatever those people tend to say, that I don't agree with, because with empathy, we need that kind of mutuality. Here's my pain, here's your pain. Let's listen to each other.
Yeah, you appreciate what I was saying about empathy as being a demand, because there's the mutuality aspect of it, that I'll listen to your pain and you listen to my pain and we'll listen to each other. So you have sort of an appreciation of that.
Yeah, and one thing I've been wondering is, because narcissism, I see that as a pandemic. So I'm wondering how many people in environmental communities who actually have a lot of issues and are narcissistic. So that is where, yeah, maybe you should focus the problem on people who are not being empathic, instead of like Black people, poor them, disabled people, poor them. Let's just focus on them who don't have empathy.
So you think that instead of sort of seeing people the victim, poor them, it should be like on the issue of narcissism and people who do not have empathy. Maybe the demand should be something around, hey, we need to address the lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay,
Thank
cool.
you.
Speak to Paul.
So should I be speaking or listening?
No, I speak to you and you reflect back what you hear me say. So, and I have up to 5 minutes. So, yeah, this is interesting. I think it's an interesting topic. This forced demand and the relationship to empathy. So, yeah, I just see it as a very interesting topic. Maybe I'll pause there.
You see it as an interesting topic, the relationship between demand and empathy.
Yeah, and let's see, what do I think? What else do I want to add? I guess it's my sense of, I was at a Black church, a couple of years ago, because there was someone had been, a Black person was shot on our subway here, and there was a lot of demonstrations, and I went there, and there was a Black woman. I remember her son had been killed. I don't know what the situation was, and she said, I don't know what justice is. My son is dead. It's like, what is justice? So, and that always just sort of stuck in my mind, is like, people are hurt or harmed, what is really justice? Is justice kind of harming and punishing the other person? The person is still dead, there's still that loss and that pain. So I don't know, somehow that just really, I always kind of remember that woman saying that.
So Edwin is uncertain. There's a feeling that what the meaning of justice actually is, giving the example of encounter he had at the church where somebody was killed.
Yeah, the justice is not a healing process. It's a retribution, process. It's like we got to punish the other person. And so it's sort of that retribution again. And I think that just kind of, the retribution just keeps going through society. It keeps ping-ponging throughout society to have that retribution. And so I think empathy is about listening and healing. And I think that would actually stop a lot of the conflict going forward.
So I didn't think that justice is a circular process, which as a result, there's no ending and it just perpetuates itself.
And the other thing that's coming to mind is about the victimization. There's something called the drama triangle in conflict mediation. And that process is, there's a victim, and then there's the perpetrator, and then there's the rescuer. And what happens is the rescuer sees the victim, and then they kind of stand up to the perpetrator, but then they become a perpetrator in their attempt at saving the victim. And then these three roles keep changing, this victim, perpetrator, rescuer roles. And then, because then the perpetrator sees the rescuer as the perpetrator and themselves as the victim. So the roles change. And it's sort of this never-ending mess of victim, perpetrator, rescuer. And it's like, it's the kind of never-ending drama.
So you're basically saying that each person perceives the situation differently from their own perspective, as to who is currently the victim or the persecutor or the rescuer, and that changes
yeah,
as the situation develops.
And I think the route out of that is instead of being a rescuer, is to be an empathizer. You empathize with the person who's feeling, you know, like they're harmed, and to the person that maybe would be seen as the perpetrator. You just see them as human beings, and you empathize with both, and then try to get them into an empathic dialogue with each other.
So Edwin thinks it's better to be empathizing than rescuing.
Exactly, and to bring everybody into an empathic dialogue. You know, it's not just, I'm going to go rescue you. It's like, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear you, what's going on for you. But how about you also listen to the other person too? And then we try to bring everyone into an empathic dialogue. And I've seen it over and over again that actually works. It's
So
difficult, but it does work.
So a mutual rescue, and also not rescue, mutual empathy you're describing.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you, Paul.
It's my go.
Your turn. You select who you would like to speak to.
I will speak to Sophia. Is it okay with you?
Yeah, sure.
First of all, I would like to comment on what Edwin has just said. It doesn't make sense to me at all. If somebody was attacking me, I would much rather be rescued than being empathized with. You know, when you are being empathized with, you still end up dead. When you are being rescued, you may have a chance of survival.
So you would like to comment on what Edwin just said, and it made no sense to you, because if you were being attacked, then you wouldn't want to be empathized with. You would want to be rescued.
It's probably my my sort of male point of view, because I'm a doer. I want to do things. I want to fix things. I want to rescue things. Empathizing doesn't really sit very well with me, and I'm often criticized for it, which is probably a fault of mine. But there you are.
Mm. So you see your way of thinking as a part of you being a male, and you're a doer, you're a rescuer, and I also heard you being criticized for not being empathic enough.
Okay, now if I turn my attention to the demand itself, my first point would be that actually it's not a demand at all. It is not a demand. I don't know why we're calling it a forced demand. The first three demands are things that XR is demanding of our governments. The forced demand seems to be something that we are demanding of ourselves. That's not a demand. That is a principle. We might want to rephrase it to say, okay, this is the type of principle we want to live by, and it will apply to XR members. But how can we demand of ourselves something? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, so you want to reframe the demand, the fourth demand, because you don't see it as a demand. The first three demands are kind of like we're putting demands on governments, and the fourth demand is kind of like a demand on you, on how you should behave, and that's more of a principle to you, and it makes no sense.
When I said government, it's just short for the ruling classes and the media, not just governments as such.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen various versions, and all of the versions name various groups of people, and that's a problem because obviously, as soon as you start naming various groups of people, you are leaving out other groups of people. Exactly the point that Sophia made earlier.
Yeah, so you don't appreciate that you only focus on one group of people and you leave out other people, other groups of people.
We are often discussing the force demand as something which will be very useful, very good for third world countries in view of climate change. I think actually we may be completely wrong on that, because I think that third world countries are probably groups going to survive climate change in much better condition than so-called advanced countries, because we rely on all kinds of technologies, and those technologies are going to be the first things that will start breaking down. If your life is centered on growing vegetables and feeding your family of your small plot of land, then your life is not going to change by climate change, unless of course it turns into a desert. It's a different story, I agree.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you were talking about the fourth demand or the kind of organization in itself, that they are focusing on. They are talking a lot about how to implement these kind of rebellious actions in third countries. And how you see it is that is kind of pointless, because they are all already living, they are already keeping their own land, growing their own vegetables, and why should we try to change that? Is that correct?
That's more or less right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, even third world countries have industries, have energy supplies, and so on. But nevertheless, by the very definition of third world countries, am I out of time? Third world countries, they are more reliant on local supplies, local food production, local manufacture, and less on imports from elsewhere, as advanced countries are. And that's therefore, in my judgment, they will be affected less by climate change than advanced countries.
Mm.
Okay.
So third countries are living basically how you would like to see advanced countries live, and they are buying locally, growing their own food, and you don't see the point that in kind of like changing that. You just feel very firmly about that.
Okay, I think it will do. Thanks.
Thank you. John.
Hey, thank you very much, Sophia.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just surprised of how clear Paul was in the way he talked, because I had no problems following him, and sometimes the language is kind of like I don't understand that word, but I really appreciated how clear he was. It was very easy to reflect back.
So you found that Paul's manner of speech was easy to understand, and you felt comfortable reflecting to him.
Yeah. And yeah, I was expecting people kind of like lashing out on me for saying that, but I'm feeling not about what I said about Paul, but the things I said before. But yeah, I feel kind of safer exploring my thoughts now when I don't get judged for them.
So after expressing your thoughts about the fourth demand and the position of, well, I should just say, you feel more comfortable after having the experience of not being judged for expressing yourself.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed Edwin's, where he talked about the triangle, and the way I understood it is that you of course you don't try to empathize in a situation of danger. It's when you're out of that situation and there's a victim, perpetrator, and a savior. That's how I saw it.
There's you want people to understand that the stepping out of the role of rescuer, perpetrator, or victim and into empathy is appropriate when there's not imminent danger.
Yeah, exactly. And well, maybe I'm not the right person to have an opinion about what XR should do or don't do, but my feeling is that that demand shouldn't be there. Basically, because I also feel that I can't save Black people. I can't save them. I don't want to be responsible for another person's worth. They need to find that in themselves. It doesn't matter how many times I'll tell them that they matter. If you don't feel that within yourself, it doesn't matter if I come and try to save them from their own emotional pain. I just feel that that's not my job as a white person. My job is to heal myself.
So your thought is that it's better to not have a fourth demand because the people who are named in that fourth demand can't be saved by white people. And are you shaking your head because I got it wrong, or?
No, I just agreed. Yeah.
They can't be saved by white people, and that it's the role of white people to heal themselves.
Yeah, that's my role, at least. The only thing that I have control over is how I respond and react and to heal myself. And I don't feel that just because you're Black, you're supposed to look for outside validation from white people to tell them that they matter. I see that as a very unhealthy pattern. I see that is not helping, because if a jerk tells a Black person that they're not worth anything because of their skin color, they can't look for him to validate them. That's kind of stupid. To me, it's stupid. In the same way as if a guy tells me that, should I go look for him and hunt him down to tell him that I matter? No, I leave him and I go find people that tell me that I matter. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I hope you follow.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think the core of what I got was that you know, if a person is being invalidated and told they don't matter, that it's there's no you wouldn't go to the people who are telling that person that they don't matter. That the person who's being told they don't matter should go and find a group that will validate them and show that they matter.
Yeah, and show them that they're worth something. Yeah, thank you. I feel very heard.
Thanks very much, Sophia. Yeah, so I'll speak to Andy. Andy, you're still muted.
Yeah. Okay, John, yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess there's a couple of things about the XRUS fourth demand that I would address. I think there's a framing for the word justice that I guess could I hadn't really thought of what Edwin had been saying about justice is something that's inherently about retribution.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that I would like to discuss relative to the XRUS fourth demand. And in regard to what Edwin said about justice being retributive, that's not something I thought of before. That's not the way I...
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I mean, we have a concept of restorative justice. So one can achieve an outcome that's fair or just or equitable or reasonable, without a retributive system. And
justice isn't necessarily retributive. There's restorative justice, where one achieves an outcome which is fair, equitable, and restorative.
Okay, thanks. And so changing the language of the demand in that respect, if a similar demand with a term like equity or fairness, would be less confusing, or that could certainly be an improvement. But just transition is a phrase that people have been using to reflect the need to build in policies that bring us to a new system in a way that does not further harm the vulnerable populations.
It's maybe we should change the terminology in order to clarify what's really meant, and using terms like equity and fairness. And then we also talk about a just transition, which is really that we don't want to continue the inequity that has been experienced by vulnerable populations.
Thank you, Andy. And so the other point that I wanted to sort of reiterate is that in the U.S. and the Americas in general, the indigenous people were subjected to extermination. In some parts of the Americas, they were only exterminated from, only, I guess, parts of the territories. But in the U.S., the extermination was fairly complete and is ongoing. Also, and I don't know the history of other places very well, but I've studied, the U.S. history, and Black people are separate from the rest of the population because Black people were written into laws as separate from the general population laws, and later in policies that were not explicitly using the word Black. So, the need to support the leadership of these people, and that's what the U.S. Fourth Demand says, is that when these people are acting as acting for climate justice, their needs or their leadership is to be guide the outcomes. So that's
that
my.
was it. Just wanted to maybe get a final reflection on that, and it'll come back around.
Yeah. Okay. So you made a lot of points in that one, and I'll do this, which is that the first point. I've been studying the history, particularly of the U.S., but I think this applies to all the Americas. That indigenous peoples were exterminated, and in the U.S. it's pretty much total and it's ongoing. And also in terms of relation to Black people, various laws were framed historically in order to separate them and exclude them. And sorry, there was something else you went on to from that. I'm really sorry, but I forgot it.
I think it was the leadership that
Oh yeah, sorry,
leadership.
yeah, thank you very much. That actually, when we talk about the movement to address the climate crisis, then if indigenous people are in the leadership, then I see this as positive. I think that's what you're saying. So,
I would just adjust that to say that our role is to find ways to support effective leadership by the members of Indigenous and Black communities.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So our role is to support the leadership by Indigenous and Black communities. Okay. So in terms of my turn, I would like to ask Paul to reflect for me. Is that okay, Paul? Thank you very much. Okay. So, I finding this a very rich discussion, and there are really diverse views in this group, and I must say how much I appreciate that, because we're quite a small group, but we're all listening to each other and expressing different views.
A lot of diverse opinion in this group, and we are listening well to each other.
I must admit that I have some empathy with different views within the group, and so I'm not gonna totally push for my own view, because I don't have a specific clear view.
I don't have a specific view, so I will not push for that. I will explore views.
I actually appreciate all the views that have been expressed in the group so far, and there's, in my heart, there's something which responds positively to all the views that have been expressed.
I appreciate all the views, and I respond positively to all the views expressed.
One of the things I'd like to say, though, is that for me, the fourth demand is connected with global justice. And I think that the concept of global justice goes back a very long way.
The fourth demand is connected to global justice, which goes a long way.
To me, one of the root problems in the world is patriarchy, which came into force maybe with the agricultural revolution. And along with it came empire, slavery, colonialism, and many kinds of exploitation and inequalities.
Patriarchy is the root of all evil.
And also, I think that's what's brought us to the climate crisis, is the disrespect for Mother Earth.
The patriarchy is also responsible for the climate crisis.
So to me, global justice is much more about restoration, as John spoke, which is to bring about a sense of fairness among all the different communities in the world that are suffering right now. It's not just a historical thing.
So it's about bringing fairness into the picture for all those communities that are suffering right now, not just historical.
Globally, there's definitely a global elite which is represented in certain communities in the world who benefit from the oppression of other communities who are being robbed of their livelihood and their resources.
Global elites are benefiting from the oppression of various communities.
And Extinction Rebellion seeks to bring about a big change which will help us to resolve the climate crisis. And I don't think this can be achieved without consciousness and awareness of these inequalities.
XR wishes to bring about change or reversal of the climate change situation, and you don't believe that this can be done without bringing global justice.
I do agree that empathy is fundamental to the solution. And I think that it's incumbent on us, especially someone like myself, who is relatively privileged in the world, to have empathy for all those less privileged than me.
I believe empathy is necessary, and that it is my duty to be empathetic.
And that way, I think that we can act and rebel in solidarity with different communities. And I also quite like what John said about offering, particularly indigenous populations, a role in the leadership of the climate rebellion.
Indigenous population should have a leadership in the climate rebellion. And I'm sorry, they made a point before that which slipped my mind.
It's okay, it doesn't matter. The indigenous populations have a deep relationship with Mother Earth, which many of the rest of us have lost. And that's why I think it'd be good to grant them leadership, and I'll stop there. Thank you, Sophia.
Indigenous populations have a deep relationship with Mother Earth, and therefore they should have leadership of the effort to reverse climate change.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Paul. You reflected very well for me. Thank you.
I try to phrase it in words other than yours.
That's fine. Yeah, no, it was good. Yeah.
Okay, it's my turn to choose to speak to somebody. I would like to speak to Andy.
You want to come back to me? Okay.
Yes.
Sure. I'll do my best.
I hear what you say, but I do not think that line of thinking is logical.
You heard what Andy said, but you think it's illogical.
I think that's the fact that indigenous populations are the ones, I mean, you say they are suffering under the oppression of the ruling classes. I agree with that.
Indigenous populations are suffering, and it's under the oppression of the ruling classes.
But the ruling classes are not necessarily anything to do with Western countries. It is a condition of current human civilization that there are ruling classes and the classes are being ruled. In fact, if you reflect through history, there were always ruling classes and classes were ruled, except now it's much less of a division than it was ever in the past.
So the ruling classes aren't in a particular country. Historically, they've always been ruling classes, and it's, yeah, I think that's what you said.
I think that citing climate change is primarily a question. It's not. I think you implied that climate change was caused by patriarchy and patriarchy imposed ruling classes. Would that be correct?
It seems that you think that I said that patriarchy is the kind of origin for climate change, and that patriarchy involves the ruling classes.
Well, to my mind, scientifically, climate change is caused by the release of carbon dioxide by burning fossil fuels. Actually, it's nothing to do with patriarchy. Even if the whole world was being led by women, as soon as we discovered the wonderful new energy source in coal, it would have been used anyway, because whilst we didn't know the effects of burning of coal, it was a wonder product.
So I definitely can't say that climate change comes from patriarchy. It comes from burning of fossil fuels and releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And even if the world had been led by women, once it was discovered that coal could, be a source of fuel, then we would have dug it out of the ground and created this situation.
Clearly, capitalism is a system which is very innovative. It makes excellent use of available resources, but it's also driven by the one thing and one thing only, which is profit, and it doesn't take into consideration the kind of problems that may arise as a result of that activity.
So capitalism is indeed innovative and makes good use of resources, but because of being driven by the profit motive, it doesn't take into account the consequences of its activities.
But that can be regulated. It is in the power of governments to decide that all companies and all businesses and all corporations have to either price in or account for any damage that they do to the environment. It is a question of passing small number of laws to force companies to do that. If we did that, If we had done that, then climate change wouldn't have got anywhere as bad as it has, and would have been by now reversing.
So to me, it's just simply a matter of the government passing laws to regulate the behavior of companies. And if that had been done already, we wouldn't have got into the climate crisis that we're in now.
The problems we have with different races on the planet living together in the same countries are entirely, in my opinion, unrelated to the climate change. They are equally as they are a problem that needs to be addressed and resolved, but they are completely unrelated to climate change. I think relating it to climate change is simply clouding the issue.
So I do not see racial conflict as anything to do with climate change, and I think that that is a misleading way that things are being expressed.
Thank you very much. I know it's hard. Your turn, Andy.
Oh yes, that is. Okay, so I would quite like to invite. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe John, actually. Would you listen to me, John?
Certainly. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, John. Okay. So, I actually do think that different forms of oppression are interrelated, and that includes oppression of nature.
You think that the different forms of oppression are interrelated, including the oppression of nature?
And I think the empathic culture I would like to see would be empathy not only with all peoples of this planet, but with all species of this planet, and also with the natural environment itself.
And your belief is that a fully empathic transformation would include all species in this environmental systems that we live in.
Not only species, but all the different peoples of the planet, and also the actual natural environment. And this transformation, I think, is the only way out of the collection of crises which are affecting the planet at the moment.
So the only way out of the collection of crises that are affecting the planet at the moment is to bring about a empathetic way of relating to all peoples, species, and the environment.
Thank you. And yeah, capitalism is definitely a part of the problem. But along with that comes racism, and also the disregard for the history of indigenous peoples on their own land.
So the capitalism is the system that's creating the destruction, but with capitalism comes racism and the disregard of indigenous people and their history and territory.
Yeah, that's right. And the reason why I relate it with patriarchy is because patriarchy is the oppression of one half of the human race by the other half. And so to me, it's a fundamental oppression.
And since patriarchy is the oppression of one half of humanity by the other half, it's sort of the fundamental oppression.
And with it came the oppression of Mother Earth, who, is like the mother for all life on the planet.
And the a patriarchal outlook brought about oppression of Mother Earth. I guess that's.
And I think that patriarchy is fundamentally non-empathic.
And you would say that an empathic way of being is incompatible with patriarchy.
And it's also incompatible with racism and colonialism.
And an empathetic way of being is incompatible with racism and colonialism.
And I do not believe that we can resolve the climate crisis in isolation from the other things.
And your belief is that climate crisis is not resolvable in isolation from the other from these oppressions.
Yeah, that's all I have to say right now. Thank you, John. Thank you. You reflected very well what I had to say.
Well, thank you, Andy. I guess I'd like to speak to Edwin.
Listening.
Oh, thank you, Edwin. Yeah, I guess as far as what is a demand and what is a way of being or a value or a principle. Excuse me. I mean, the reason that XRUS brought in that what can be abbreviated just transition as a demand is that it's one of the goals that we hold out as a result of the rebellion. It's the availability of remediation and reparations of harms is not any kind of principle that that we can enact as we do our work. It's an outcome that we seek.
So you were kind of looking at what is the demand, what's the principles, what's the value, and I was a little unclear that it's the fourth demand is about. Yeah, I didn't quite understand that. Maybe you could say it again.
Yeah. So I mean, the body of the fourth demand says that there should be reparations and remediation for the harm that has been suffered by these the vulnerable people, and
can I reflect that back first? So you're saying that the fourth demand is saying that there should be reparations for people that have been harmed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that's an outcome of the rebellion that we would seek.
So that the rebellion of XR is seeking that the people who have been harmed would be compensated with reparations of some sort. And that's part of the XR, about the rebellion.
Yeah, reparations or remediation, yeah.
Or remediation,
mm-hmm. And so I guess, my current belief is that, that it's not a change of policy that's going to bring any of this about. It's some form of globe. I'm struggling because I don't want to use the word global. It's transnational revolution that takes power from those who have been harming and extracting life from people and or living beings on the planet.
So what you see is the way forward is to take power from the people who have been creating harm and to others and to the planet, and it's like taking power from them. And it's a lot. You're sort of struggling with the vocabulary around that. Didn't want to use the word global or sort of transnational, or you're kind of struggling, looking for the words to express that.
Yeah, because I think of it that that as Paul was saying, there's the kinds of changes that could be enacted as policy. It's too late, and now we have to turn. Yeah.
So it's too late just to change some policies. Now we got to sort of take power from the people that have it and they've been doing the harm. So it's sort of it has to do more with taking back the power. That was the time too, but.
Thanks. Thank you very much, everyone. I feel heard.
Okay. Speak to Sophia then.
Yes, I'm listening.
Yeah, so, I made some notes while we were talking, and one of the things that came up, I think that one thing that XR is missing is sort of a values statement. It has principles and demands, but it doesn't clearly articulate its values.
Yes, you were taking notes as people were speaking, and one thing that you have noticed is that there are principles and demands, but there aren't any values spoken of.
Yeah, and the values are usually sort of like an essence, like empathy is a value, or care, or mutuality, or authenticity, or openness. So there's these values that you say this is sort of the vision we have of the qualities that we want to promote. And then a principle is usually like a one-sentence description of how you actualize those values. Yeah,
so values are kind of like the essence of a foundation or organization, or and what you see in XR is that what I'm hearing is that it's more on a strategy level than it is on an essence level. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And if we had that sort of essences level, that kind of helps orientate, creates a clear orientation. So it creates more clarity, I think.
Yeah. So if there was an essence there, that it would be easier to kind of like go in that direction. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and then I was thinking about Paul wanting to be rescued. So that there is the sort of a term of protective use of force. That somebody's beating someone, and there's harm happening. You want to stop the harm. I mean, that happening. But then you want to start creating an empathic dialogue with people. Okay, I hear you're really angry and you really, and this person you're really suffering. Can we bring this into an empathic dialogue? So you're just stopping the immediate harm and that's happening, with the person being beaten physically, harm. But the underlying goal is to bring people into an empathic dialogue.
Yeah, so you just wanted to clarify what you meant about victim and being the perpetrator. Is that of course you stop a person if they're doing harm on another person, but then immediately after, is what I'm hearing, is that you engage people in empathic dialogue to kind of solve the issue.
Right. You're not using retribution or revenge or, you know, these sort of values. So the goal is to stop the immediate harm, but then to bring them into the dialogue, into the empathic dialogue.
So stop the immediate harm and then immediately go into dialogue.
And that a lot of times, if there's like verbal conflicts and so forth, it seems like things are kind of blowing up. I've started listening to both sides, and when people start feeling heard in that environment, they start de-escalating. So that's like with policing, right? I mean, good policing is they're trained in de-escalation, and de-escalation is hearing the different sides, which when people feel heard, they start calming down, and then they're more open to go into a mutual dialogue. So
yeah, so what I'm hearing is that even when there's kind of like verbal meanness happening, if both parties are being listened to, they eventually kind of like soften up, is what I'm hearing, and can go into that dialogue.
And also all the things that Andy's talking about, you know, patriarchy, racism, colonialism, I see those all as blocks to empathy. Those all shut down empathy. But the solution is not more hierarchy and more lack of empathy. It's more empathy. Empathy is the solution to that. So we can't stop patriarchy and hierarchy with more, you know, matriarchy and more hierarchy. It has to be, the means are the end. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the time. And what I'm hearing is that you're talking about different kinds of oppressions, basically. And what you're saying is that you can't stop oppression with oppression.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's empathy that solves it. So
yeah,
I feel
exactly.
heard.
Yeah. Andy.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, I'm listening.
I also have a preference for you to not speak in I sentences, but reflect as best as you can. Yeah. Yeah, the thing I've been sitting here listening to everybody's point of view, and the only thing that pops up in my mind is that I ended a relationship 1 week ago with a guy who was very much an environmentalist. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
So you've been listening to what everybody's been saying, and there's one thing that's popped into your mind that you want to talk about, which is connected to the fact that a week ago you ended a relationship with a guy who is an environmentalist.
Exactly. And the reason why I ended that relationship was because he is really fucked up. He confessed a lot of things in the end that made me believe that he maybe has psychopathic traits.
So I entered the relationship because this guy is really fucked up, and some of the things that he confessed to me, sorry, I'm saying it in the first person, and you're saying that some of the things that he confessed to you demonstrated that he might have a psychopathic nature.
Yeah, and that has kind of like turned my world around, because someone can present themselves to be very good-hearted. I care about the environment, I care about people, but when you dig in to a little deeper, you see that that is only a facade that the person is putting up to sort of like hide their true nature.
So you're saying that this whole experience has turned your whole world around, and what you've kind of understood from it is that although someone might present themselves as very caring or a very good person or sort of very positive things, that actually when you dig deeper, you might find something really dark.
Exactly, and where I'm getting here is that having the right ideas and point of views comes kind of secondary. You have to, I liked what Edwin said, you have to have an essence of what are your values, because if you lack kind of a value system, what you believe in will become destructive, basically.
And so what you're saying is that you agree with Edwin that essence or values are really the most important thing, because ideas are actually secondary, and so you feel that it's only through having these values that I guess that you could be really trustworthy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and because ideas are kind of like, they're just ideas, they don't tell you about the human being behind them. That's where I'm getting to. And what I'm trying to go with that is that even if the demand or principles that you have kind of have the right intentions, they can still create harm if they're done by evil people. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that just having the right ideas isn't a guarantee that everything's going to be okay, because evil people can express those ideas, but actually perpetrate great harm.
Yes, thank you. That's my time.
Okay. So I'm going to request Paul to listen to me, please. And first of all, I'd like to agree that values are essential and that ideas are secondary. And I want to assert that XR does have values.
He agrees that values are important and XR does have values.
In fact, this is printed out in my folder, and when Edwin said that XR doesn't have values, I got it out. And Edwin's already facilitated a number of empathy circles looking at XR's principles and values.
You have showed us something which we couldn't quite read, but it's presumably a printout of XR principles. And Edwin has already run several sessions on these principles. I don't know what the values. Sorry, I'm saying the title of reflect. I'm sorry.
Values, not the principles, because Edwin's distinguished between those two things, and I got the feeling that when Sophia talks about ideas, that's kind of more in line with what Edwin calls principles, whereas values are probably something more to do with the person.
Okay, so Andy believes that what Sophia was referring to was really principles, not values as referred to by Edwin.
And one of the things that has made me feel comfortable to be part of XR is these very values. And I'm going to say what some of them are. One of them is non-violence. And that's something that I fundamentally believe in.
So one of the reasons why Andy is happy to be part of XR is because of these particular values. The first one of which he read out as non-violent, NVDA, non-violent directions, or non-violence generally.
Non-violence generally is very much a value that is part of XR. And I've been involved in other political movements in the past, and they did not have that value. But I feel safe in XR because it does have that value.
And it was part of other movements that didn't have those values, and he feels safer here in XR, because of the presence of those values.
But even more fundamental than the non-violence for me is the value of avoiding blaming and shaming. This is something very difficult for anybody to actually live up to. It's a very powerful and deep ethical value to avoid blaming and shaming.
Even more important is the no blaming and shaming principle that XR have. That's it.
And you know, XR has a value of including everyone and every part of everyone. And this is also very difficult to live up to.
Okay, so another value or principle, as XR call it, is to include everyone and every part of everyone, which is difficult to accept.
Including everyone and every part of everyone is quite connected to empathy, because I don't think you can include everyone and every part of everyone unless you have empathy for them.
And this principle seems to basically encompass the concept of empathy.
And actually, including everyone and every part of everyone is very closely connected with the fourth demand, because if you look at it globally, then it's the exclusion of certain peoples, which is the problem that the fourth demand is designed to address.
But Andy is saying that that the fourth demand is intended to ensure that certain people who are currently excluded would be included by the adoption of fourth demand. Am I interpreting it correctly?
Yeah. For example, in my local XR group, we've recently been joined by a person who has autism and some serious mental disabilities. And the group has tried to put into practice this value of including everyone. And actually, this person says that they really feel good in the group. And that's where I'm going to finish.
Well, and he was saying that as an example, his own group has a new member who has various types of problems, which makes his participation or her participation in the group difficult. But they try to put this value in practice, and it seems to be working.
Thanks, Paul. Great.
Edwin.
Listening?
I am getting slightly frustrated with this process.
So you're just feeling some frustration with this process.
And that is because some of it, not all of it, but some of it is repeating the same points without relating it to the points previously made by other speakers.
So what I'm hearing is that the frustration is that there's points that aren't being sort of related to other what other speakers have said, so it's sort of not building on each other.
I want to make it clear that I'm not referring to Andy's previous comments. There are completely new comments that have not been referred to before. I was referring to other comments before that by various people.
So you're not referring to Andy, but to other people's comments that they're.
No, that's not what I said. I didn't. I said that I didn't refer to Andy's last comments.
Oh, you're
not
you're
necessarily the
not
previous ones.
you're not referring to his last comments, but maybe previous comments.
Okay. I don't know whether the structure designed here is capable of addressing this, but it seems to me that it would be nice if he could, you know, if somebody makes a point you disagree with, if he could simply say something more than just I disagree with, and this is, I feel I don't like this, or I don't agree with that. If he could actually give reasons behind those feelings or those arguments.
Yeah, so you'd like not just to say I don't agree with that, but to have a space to give reasons why you don't agree for that. So somehow a way to be able to respond with that.
Because opinions by themselves are of limited value. You know, there are 6 billion people on the planet, and every one of them has opinion. And you know, it's really of no consequence what opinion we necessarily hold. It's the reasoning from some factual information that you need to rely on, rather than simply saying my feeling is this without any substance behind that statement.
Yeah, so you really like more if you have an opinion that you really have a bunch of reasoning to share your reasoning behind that. How did you come to that statement, or what supports that statement?
I mean, it doesn't mean that obviously that invalidates feelings. Of course not. It's just that feelings do not allow us to explore possible solutions and arrive at an agreed solution. Because for that you need to contrast the different approaches or different facts as we understand them and see where there's a space for compromise.
So it's like just sharing your feelings on something is not sort of beneficial. You need to be able to compare ideas and kind of have the reasoning behind it. And to
I wouldn't go as far as saying it's not beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it is not sufficient. It is possibly necessary, and we are here in empathy circle after all, and it's a very interesting concept of sharing ideas, but it may not be sufficient. We need to go to a sort of reasoned process of some kind to arrive. A sort of pseudo-scientific process, I would call it. Let's call it that, or even scientific process. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd really like to see a more of a scientific or reasoned sort of a process. And feelings are important, but maybe it'd be more effective for a scientific, reasoned process.
So just the general comments. On specifics, I actually agree with Andy with some of his comments, because I think that actually some of the values that you thought that we didn't have are actually incorporated in XR principles. Now, they are not called values in there, and maybe they should be, or maybe they are. We have 10 principles. Some of them are values, some are just principles of behavior. So maybe there should be some sort of distinction between them, or some proper labeling, so that it's clear what is what. But I think that unless you can point to something specific, I think that the values that we want to live by are all included in those principles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you're saying that the values are actually sort of included in the principles. Maybe they could have been bit more distinction, but they are embedded sort of in those values. I mean, in those principles. Yeah,
I mean, if you look at principle now, we have a shared vision. Number one, so that's a statement of value, because it assumes certain vision of future world. Number two, we set our mission of what is necessary. Now that is simply a tactical statement. We are going to do this particular thing in this particular way because that's the way to achieve something. So to those two principles are on a completely different level. So I agree that the values are included, but they are not clearly differentiated from principles of operation in our principles.
Yeah, so you see that the principles, the values are sort of included, but in the principles, but they're just not clearly distinction made between them. And maybe, yeah, so I think that was the time too. So
yeah,
so I'll speak to I guess Sophia. Let me just send out a notice here that back to full group. I just take going to go back shortly. Yeah, I agree with Andy that there's, you know, the principles have sort of an embedded values in it. So it's not like, and it's sort of, and I agree with Paul that it could have been more clearly differentiated, you know, just for clarity's sake. So yeah,
Yeah, so you agree with Andy that there are some core values there, but it's yeah, you it seems like you want to have them more specific. Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah. And then also that they're more positively set, because one of the things is we avoid blaming and shaming is a negation of, it's not, it's sort of, what is the value? Avoidance in that one? Is it, you know, what is, you know, I would say we empathize with each other is sort of the positive manifestation of blame. We avoid blaming and shaming, right? So make it a positive statement of what we are instead of a negation of what we're not doing.
Yeah, so the values that XR are having are kind of like negatively stated, avoid this and that, and you reflect upon, so what is the value there? Avoidance, and what you want is for them to be more positively stated.
And
yeah, for example,
and even nonviolence. I always have a problem with even the term nonviolence. I get it. You know, you can say, oh, it's based on ahimsa and all this, you know, Indian, you know, vocabulary from Gandhi, but it is also a negation. It's like it's nonviolence. So it's just, what is the positive manifestation of that value is kind of what I'm, kind of curious.
Yes, even non-violence is a negation. It's like what you don't want, but what do you want?
And it seems to be something about progressives is it's all this negation stuff. It's anti-patriarchy, anti-racism, anti-colonization, it's this whole spectrum of against it. It's like which is kind of like we are for being against stuff. So it's a disaster, if you ask me.
Yeah, so what you see is in this whole movement of being anti patriarchy, anti-racism. So what is the value there? Being against something, and yeah, you feel sick of it, I hear.
I think it's so funny. It's just, I don't know, it's so weird. For example, the political right wing comes to Berkeley and they say, we want free speech. And what does the left do? It's like, we're against hate, we're against racism. It's like, what are you for though? You know, it's like, tell us what you're for. You know, I go there with the empathy tent and say, I'm for empathy. I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to have you listen to each other. And it's like, we're too busy. We like our fighting. We like our cortisol. We like the battle. You know? It's somehow, it's like totally crazy. It's like we live in this crazy world. It's like, I don't know. It's just too funny.
Yeah, so you think it's humorous that you see all these people shouting what they're against, and then you stand there and try to like say, but I'm for empathy, and they don't want to, they seem to want to keep on being against something. And yeah,
I think people are addicted to the battle. People are addicted to cortisol. You know, there's cortisol addiction or something. You know, cortisol is the fight hormone. So
yeah, so people are addicted to battles and to getting that cortisol high.
So that's it. We're going to be heading back to the full room because we're at the top of the hour. So yeah, thanks everyone. I really enjoyed the discussion and really grateful for everybody listening and really loved it.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So, see you in the full room.
It was really interesting. It was really interesting to hear from people that I clearly disagree with on various points without being shouted at or you know, shouted down. So it's brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. See you there.
Here we are.
Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good discussion, a dialogue in your groups. And so we're going to go around now just to give, share any, take a minute or actually two to talk about, actually put 2 minutes up on the clock. And to talk about just anything that was, came up for you that you'd like to share. And, this is the last of our series. We're not meeting again next week. So we've done 16 of these cafes. And, we've gone through all the principles, all the values, not the values, we've gone through the principles and the demands. And so this is the last call in this series. It'll be starting again for Australia time. So if you're in Europe, you'll be able to take part in that. And maybe any ideas you have, any feedback on the series would be good too. So I'll call on, Bill, do you want to call on people to?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Keep time, sure. Thanks.
Okay. Sophia, would you like to share?
Yeah, it was interesting. I felt a little off because I'm not an XR, but I enjoyed the conversations that we had, and especially the conversation about creating values that are positively stated. And Edwin talked about that. He was the last person. And it's kind of like how XR states their values in negotiations, I think he said, and that he wants them to be more positively stated. And that's kind of like out of the topic, but I enjoyed it anyway. And I also want to add to Paul, because he mentioned the last time he spoke that he didn't see the point of kind of like talking like this because there seems to be no solutions created. And he's actually right. There aren't solutions made in these circles. So he's correct about that. And the way that I see it is that my aim is to learn how to listen to other people. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Thanks, Sophia. John?
Hi, thanks very much. And I really appreciate that I got to participate in several of the cafes. I think this is number 5 for me. And yes, yeah, I would sort of regret that I didn't have time to join all 16. I really appreciate the effort and time that the organizers put in. And I guess the thing that I'm left with, and from that conversation about the fourth demand, is just the anguish that I experience over the schism in the U.S. between the two groups that diverged because of differences about a fourth demand. And I'm, I mean, I just wish there was more coming together and less splintering apart. So thanks for everybody who's here and listening.
Thank you, John. Andy?
Yeah, there's a lot to think about from our discussion today. And I really love the fact that very diverse views were expressed and listened to respectfully and absorbed to quite a degree. And I've certainly got food for thought. And I think that went for the other couple of these cafes on Extinction Rebellion, which I've attended. I don't think we need to go into opposition against Extinction Rebellion for not being empathic enough, because it's time that we empathize with where XR is coming from as well, which is a response to the climate crisis. And we're doing the best. I'm speaking as a part of XR. We're doing the best we can with what we have, and I think we're doing quite well. And also, I'd just like to reflect on the empathy circles in general, because I've also been attending a couple of the ones on the core values of empathy, and I found it a very powerful method for actually exploring where I'm at, but also feeling where others are at. And it's also a great sharing, so that you don't feel isolated. You feel you're part of a kind of collective organism in a certain way during the circle. And I think that's a very important experience for us humans to generate collectively, because it's part of the healing and the resolution of the terrible sort of atomization and fragmentation that's come about in our culture. Which is part of the reason why we have all these problems in the world, frankly. So I really, really appreciate those who have evolved this methodology and sort of shared it with us. And yeah, I'm taking a lot forward from these experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Paul?
Right, hello. Well, this is my first, and it appears last program to participate in, which is a shame, because I tried to participate in a previous one, but somehow I didn't manage to get in. I don't know, I must have the wrong link or something. And it was interesting and informative. And it's particularly powerful in the sense that it forces people who disagree with each other to state accurately these beliefs of their opposition. And that hopefully then aids understanding of the opposite point of view. However, I did find it a little bit frustrating that after a couple of rounds of most of us speaking, we were basically, or it seems to be getting towards the point where people were starting to repeat what they have said previously, and not addressing the points that were made by the other people on the opposite side of the argument in the room. And one can imagine that this can then lead to a series of monologues which do not interact with each other, which is a pity. And I don't know whether this method could be improved in some way, so that as to facilitate the discussion of individual points, or so that we don't simply have series of repetitions. Also, I noticed there is a slight potential flaw in that, because each person selects the next person to be talked to. If you have a group of people or two groups of people who are on opposite sides of an argument, there is a possibility, which I thought might arise, but didn't arise in our group, that people will start talking to the people that they agree with and exclude the people on the other side of the argument, because they can simply keep talking to the people they agree with. I don't know whether they have some kind of a fail-safe mechanism as facilitators, but obviously there's a slight danger it could turn into a monologue of mutual agreement. Although those are minor issues, it was a very, very interesting and useful program to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Maureen?
The fourth demand, what struck me about the fourth demand is looking for the legal right for the ecosystems and the biodiversity. And I think that the land that we're trying to protect is alive, it's fruitful, it wants to live with us, but for some reason or another, we are putting that land under severe stress with our behavior. And that land is a living organism. So that's what I love about Extinction Rebellion. It's an effort to appreciate the life of the land and all that the land has to offer us. And the inequalities which we recognize in our world all over, and we're privileged, most of us, living in the global north, maybe. The privilege that we have, I recognize the inequalities in our world as arising very often from the way we treat the land and the way we treat the climate and the land, basically. In our culture, we have lots of songs and proverbs and prayers and proverbs in relation to appreciation of the land. So I would like to appreciate again the facilitators and those who have put this course together. It has been a very good communication tool during the months of Zoom. I think we've had 16 weeks of this now. During these months of COVID, it has been a very good experience meeting people from across the globe, if you like, you know. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Maureen. Claire.
Yes, I felt that it was a good experience, and that's my second cafe. I'm just, yeah, I think a lot of things that were shared really resonated with me, and we've really talked about the way capitalism is running and how we would like that to change. It felt for me that there is a mind shift that's required, and it's going away from exploitation, whether it's exploitation of the land or exploitation of the people, and people in other countries as well, which can be quite something subtle from where we are, and we might not see that if we don't want to see it. And then we end up buying some products which have been made at the expense of these people. But so all of this is shifting from exploitation to connection, I feel. And I feel in some ways it's by coming together that we can move forward, and by being community, by being respectful of each other and of the land. So that's a collaborative process, and that's exactly what I feel what we are doing in an empathy cafe, because we're just listening to each other, and we're taking on all these various voices and opinion, and trying to, and somehow we come out of it in more united, or understanding each other and feeling a lot more connected. So it's a good experience. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Claire. Sarah?
So I am so grateful for this circle. I really we covered so many incredible things. This has been invaluable. My takeaways, I very much resonated with the shares about the land returning back to nature, and that the land is a living organism, and that coexistence with the earth is integral to our well-being. Also, a huge takeaway was about how there needs to be a reaffirmation of basic goodness and humanity, especially because of, I know in the United States there's been such divisiveness, and I'm also another takeaway I had was that the empathy cafes are very similar to the indigenous talking circles in a way to have all community voices heard. I have found the XR group here to be unbelievable and would love to see another at some point.
Thanks, Sarah. Kevin.
Yes, special thanks to both Edwin and Bill for the great job that you've done. Unfortunately, I couldn't be at all the other calls, but what you've done is, yes, for missing the one that had Roger Hallam on there and whatnot, but I was really lucky to have a chance to look at some of it online anyways. Fourth demand, wow. You know, as someone from Canada, a colonized country, that I work closely with Indigenous solidarity, and you know, from their perspective, you know, colonists came here, you know, 400 some odd years ago, and then after World War II. Shortly after World War II in the 50s, when wages increased in North America, you know, the 1% took the initiative, and they went to colonize other countries. And by doing that, by shipping jobs away to other marginalized markets. And so there's just been an ongoing trajectory of colonialism, and the fact now that we have allowed, as a people, we've allowed these things to happen to the point now that our very existence within the global supply chain of commodities and now food is so intricately linked to the oppression of marginalized people of color in other countries that we are all colonials and acting colonially minded just by default, because we know that the people that supply us with our goods are the most marginalized, yet we have no choices because our governments have failed us. So when you think about that from the context of an Indigenous person, that is what the fourth demand is needed for, is to wake everyone else up, to recognize the fact that we are all part of this problem. And to avoid the fourth demand is to continue to be colonially minded, because all of the work I've been doing since we've been on Zoom the last 16 weeks and over has been with global support XR, talking to XR groups in Uganda, in Africa, in India, in many other parts of the world. There's a ton of XR work going on right now that's bringing marginalized people to the forefront. So I think the fourth demand is required for that work to continue.
I'm gonna,
thanks.
Just a timer, just going to let you know the time. So thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Well, let's see. I guess I wanted to respond to Paul. I guess it's true. You don't necessarily get to some sort of resolution here. That can be very frustrating. But if I've been in a circle with you, and then we go to like a quote unquote more normal meeting, I feel much more ready to compromise and do effective work with you if I feel that you've really heard me before. And I think that's, I don't want to put words in Edwin's mouth, but he talks about it. This is a basic, bottom line thing that can be employed in many uses. And then the other thing about people talking to each other, yes, the facilitators with greater or lesser skill, depending upon our capacity at any moment, one of the things we want to do is to make sure that people haven't been heard, who haven't been heard are heard. and so that it moves around and stuff like that. And that's a skill. I've been very appreciative of everybody sharing their concerns. It certainly has made me rethink a lot of things that I've thought about. And I just look forward to people coming together while recognizing our common humanity and be willing to listen to each other. And I'm done. Edwin?
Okay, thanks, Bill. So yeah, for me, I always enjoy being heard, to have a space just to share, to be heard without having to battle, for it. And I really appreciate hearing other perspectives and sort of being able to take that in. And that's really it's sort of creating an empathic space where we can connect in. So that's what I really appreciate about the empathy circle and what we're doing here. And I know Kevin was talking about, colonialism and all this, and what that really is, I think, is just a lack of empathy. It's like people, we talked about authoritarianism, about colonization, about authoritarianism, and about other patriarchy, and all those things are about people not listening to each other, not hearing each other. So I think that what we're doing here is sort of a solution to those problems, and that's what gives me hope in what we're doing. And so in terms of next steps, if you're in the UK, you can actually continue with next week. There will be an empathy cafe with the Australians who are leading it, and it's going to start at 8 a.m. your time, so it'll be a bit early. But it's going to go through the 10 values again, 10 principles again from the beginning. And it's the same event. So if you signed up for this event, it's the same event. We'll be reusing that event and starting over again. So the links, it'll be a different Zoom room. And so you can, connect to the new Zoom room. And I think it's a really nice group that's putting that on. One of the goals here for this group is really to get everyone familiar with becoming a facilitator and want to support you. So I'm going to put in a link here to a facilitator training we're doing. So the idea is that you can learn the process and set it up, do it in your own XR group with your own XR chapters. And we want to support you in doing that. And also Bill and Lou are going to be starting a facilitator training, a 4-session facilitator training on the 28th, 30th, 4th, and 6th. And you're welcome to, that's free. And, we're just trying to get more people familiar with the practice. So hopefully you can join us in there and click on the link, and it'll show you, there'll be a link to cohort number 3. So you can, sign up for that. It'll start at the same time this group started today. And wow, I feel kind of sad that this this series is coming to an end. My goodness. I'm not sure what we're going to do next. I think I'll come up with something maybe around this time slot, maybe something around training, or I'm not really sure what to do next. So we'll have to talk. Oh, you got some ideas, Paul? Anybody have ideas?
No, I don't. But I would like to say, here it is for Zoom. Zoom, what a fantastic feature this is, before Zoom, you just couldn't do this. Fantastic.
Yeah, so appreciate the technology that we have, that we can connect with each other internationally. Yeah, it's
I mean, look at us, Australia, Canada, USA, Ireland, Sweden or something, all on the same screen. I can't believe this. I mean, it's just magic.
Yeah, so we'll be posting to your group, Rebel Facebook group, about the next event too. So yeah. So anyway, that's it. I guess, with sadness, I say goodbye and see you in the next cafe. There'll be more, coming up. And so thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.